Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our weekly IWDS local discovery session. This is session number 19, and today's date is June 6, 2024. So we will start off with our project updates, and then we will get right into today's working session. Al, do you want to give a brief update on the project updates?
Yeah. A lot of you know that we are in either discovery or build process on milestone A, B, D, E, and K. So those are the customer tracking, the applications, trade, end-to-end service templates and collections, and entity and relationship management. So just to recap, you saw a little bit of the customer tracking input into last week. The first week we saw, or being 2 weeks ago, we saw entity relationship management. You saw the entity part, the entity location contact part. We're currently developing the relationship management piece, and that we're hoping to be close to being wrapped up this sprint, which is we're in sprint 8, and sprint 8 is, I believe, over on the 13th. Okay. And then we'll probably go through one more 2-week sprint on that before we go into UAT with the entity, location, contacts, relationships, all that. Okay. And you'll see some work we're doing on ETPL today, some early work. So we'll get some feedback from you today. So that's where we are on the continued discovery, the development process, and getting it into your hands to start looking at. Sprint 8 it started last week and it'll end on the 13th. Sprint 9 will start on the 14th and end on probably like what, 27th or something, towards the end of the month there.
Awesome. All right. So we're going to just move right on to today's working session. And Al, that is still all you. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to pass it over.
All right. So we're going to show you some pictures today, and not actual. We're in the process of getting these into requirements documents and then getting them approved. So some of this is a little bit early, but I wanted to show you some concepts and let's get a little discussion going on some concepts of the new ETPL, getting on the eligible training provider list and that process. So I'm gonna share with you some pictures, so to speak. All right. Hopefully, is this in a good zoom to see this? We might have to zoom in a little bit more. So currently, I'm gonna try to go through this, and if anybody says, "Wow, that's not like that," but currently, when we have a provider that has a training program, wants to get on the eligible list within the state of Illinois, they access the IWDS public page, and if they hit a button, basically, I could take you to that now, and I'm sure many of you are very aware of this, and they enter their zip code, and it gives them contact information for who in their LWIA in the area that they're in they should contact. It also, if it's out of state or distance education, it would give them a DCO ETPL coordinator to contact. But then once they get that information, they contact that. And when we say the entity staff, means that provider, right? That provider staff contacts the appropriate ETPL coordinator based upon what they get feedback from entering that zip code. And then they work with that ETPL coordinator to get the necessary information to them. And then an ETPL coordinator from a local area, let's just talk local first. They enter the entity, just like we showed you last week in that sense, but we have an updated version of that. They enter the entity, the location, and then they create all that, and then they also in some, I should say some, because some of the locations don't, but some of the locations also set up um, a contact with and set those that contact with. They check that button that says training provider, and that training provider button checkbox or whatever generates a user ID for getting access to IWDS, where they can actually add their program. A number of LOEs do that. There's a number of LOEs that do not do that, and they collect the program information, enter it themselves. Okay. Um, and then um, and then after they get that, so if they're not one that gets it, then the ETPL coordinator enters the information, probably looks at that information before they make this, decision if it's going to be approved. Otherwise, the provider themselves enter that information for the program. That program page is a couple, 3 pages long to enter that program. And then if it's approved, I'm assuming there's some kind of a letter sent to them, or maybe some kind of signal to them in a sense that says, okay, yeah, we got you now on the ETPL. Or if it's not, for some reason, there's either a discussion or a letter or something sent to them that says it's not. I think, and I'm going to stop there because I think that's for all of you that are involved in this process or understand this process, that's how somebody today gets themselves on the ETPL. Does anybody have any caveats to that, or says, no, that's not exactly correct? Good. Okay. So this is the envision of the new ETPL application process. It's going to be more of a self-serve pre-screening process, and you're going to see most of that today. But as opposed to this, okay, we're going to this model, this flow where, and I'll explain this. So there's still that access to an IWDS public page. We're working through that landing page, so to speak, that says, here's what it takes, basically, potentially a search on that page. We have 2 or 3 different options there. We're still working on that, but there is a bit, essentially, there's going to be a lot of information on that landing page. And then there's going to be somewhere on there that says, yep, a button or something that says, yeah, I do want to this is exactly what I want to do. And I want to get on the ETPL for state of Illinois. And so they'll hit that, and it'll go into what we're calling a pre-screening process. Okay. And that pre-screening process will take on 3 different flavors, and I'll show you those. And that is an in-state program. Okay. So your entity and or your program is provided in state. And that has one flow. And then we have a pre-screening process for an out-of-state provider. And then we have a pre-screening process for a distance learning type program. Okay. And I'll take you through those. But all the pre-screening process today is that I'm going to show you is really in this box right here. And then what's going to happen, though, is if they pass that pre-screening, in other words, they answer all those questions affirmatively, then they're going to get more of a self-service. So if they pass that pre-screening, they don't pass it, the system will provide some ineligibility reasons in screens and tell them why they can't get on the program. But it's pretty self-evident. And then if they do, then they're going to get access. So what happens at that point is that user will get their access through into IWDS, and they will create their own entity, and they will create their own location and contact information. Now, all this obviously would be in kind of a a pending state because nobody's reviewed this. It's not really visible to anybody but them. And of course, our LWIA LTP coordinator, our LWIA ETP coordinator, or the state. So if this, now, once again, if this is entered, this information is entered, and it will be directed to the right LWIA, okay? Or if it's out of state or distance learning, obviously, it's going to be directed to a state DCO TPL coordinator, okay? Now, that's going to be, they're going to be notified that LWIA, whichever role we set up, for, and whoever we assign that to, or everybody assigns that to within their LWIA, they'll get a notification and maybe even like a dashboard indication, but which will direct them to that information, and they will be able to review that information that's been added, the entity, the location, the contact, and then of course the program, because that they will have already filled out the program or program screens. Okay, hold on. Let me get over here and see what's going on in chat. Yes, brand new providers not currently on ETPL. That's correct. And can the entity information that the entity fills in on the screen form, can that information then be edited if necessary by the owning LWIA? I don't see that that's a problem at all. Okay. So then if that needs to be corrected or edited or something in discussion, through discussion or whatever, that's not a problem. Okay. Then eventually through that process, you're going to say, well, yeah, we approve this from the LWIA perspective. Yes or no, whatever that process is, we'll have to follow up on that. If it's a denial letter you send to them or whatever, because they've done quite a bit there, we would go that direction. If it's approved, then it goes to the state DCO ETPL coordinator. I'm calling that, I think that's maybe not the right word, but that role that's going to approve that from a state perspective. Okay. And that's everything, even the ones, obviously the ones they did, but also the ones that come in from the LWIAs. Okay. Then after that review, it's either approved or not approved. Now, I do know there could potentially be a little bit back and forth here, there could be just some discussion and all that from a business process. I haven't got that in there, but basically you could say, hey, wait a minute, we didn't collect this information right, or something is missed, or whatever the reason is potentially fixable. But if it's not, then it's not approved. Yeah, that potential provider gets notified, or they are approved. At that point, it's set to or activated to an active status, and then they're on the ETPL. So so that's the proposed new flow, and we're going to end up talking about this, but I want to stop there for any questions, other questions about this. Okay, now I'm assuming we haven't really the state subject matter experts, we haven't talked too much about a new program yet, but I'm assuming that if you have if you have an existing entity and an existing program, you're already on the ETPL, or or whatever the reason, or you're changing that, you're going to have access to your programs, and you'll be able to also create a new program. So you can edit programs and create new programs. And if it's a new program or an edit program, it'll also go into a review status and all that kind of stuff when those get changed by the provider. But primarily what we're talking about today is brand new and getting on this through a pre-screening process.
I have a question, Al.
Yes.
This is Toriana with LA 17.
Yes.
So how would the demand list work with this process? Because if I'm understanding, you're saying the entity could add in their training programs. Would there be something when they enter that occupation, so that ONET code, that would attach to the demand list and then filter into a petition process. So would they be filtered out if they're the occupation code they enter, or at least some type of notification that says, hey, this isn't currently on the state's demand list. Do you want to enter a petition? Or I mean, like,
Yeah,
how
I
would that
haven't,
part factor in at this
we,
point? Mhm.
we haven't factored that in yet. We will, I mean, it's on the radar. So we haven't got in there to say, okay, the process of not being demand or whatever and notification, I think that would definitely comment like, so we're going to keep, obviously, those demand characteristics with our own net codes and all that current, obviously all the time. And then if it, so there's a whole process being developed on that, okay, on demand occupation stuff. So, and whether you petition and all that kind of stuff independently of a program. But if you're saying, okay, this program comes in, it's not really, they picked an ODEC code, it's not really on the demand list or whatever, it's low or whatever, then at the LWIA, you still, when you're reviewing that, you still may want to get that petitioned, right? That's what you're saying. Like
Right.
if
I'm
you're
just
saying,
saying
well,
how that would work. Yeah. The kind of
yeah,
options there. Yeah.
we haven't got that thought through yet. Okay, but it will be a part of it. But be connected to this on how you get that petition and all that in there. Okay, so but because we do have to approach all that on demand or
Got it.
demand occupation stuff. Okay, so don't it will be. It's just not yet here. And even this today, I'm only showing you this. I'm not even like we're not even to that notification dashboard review process and all that in here. We're not to that yet even, um but we have been talking a little bit about demand occupation and ONET and all that because we're building some of the pieces for that already. So anyway, it will be taken into consideration though. All right, let me take you to we have 3 flows here, and I'm going to take you to the first one, which 2 of them are pretty simple. The second one or the third one is more complex. Okay. So these first 2 are pretty simple. And remember, all these are in that box I just showed you. This is the pre-screening process. Okay. And I'm going to show you the out of state first. Then I'm going to show you distance education. Um, and then we'll look at this pre-screening of in-state. Okay. Pretty simple and straightforward here. So basically, all 3 of these routes are first going to go through, like I said, that landing page, which is not defined yet. And then we're going to collect an email address. Okay. And you're saying, well, why are you collecting an email address? We need to have something to associate the data that we collect in pre-screening to that user's entity and location and all that information that they enter later. But remember, we're not having them log in or anything, but remember, they could get out of this process of pre-screen at any time with a cancel or whatever, or exit, or they could not, like in a sense, pass the pre-screening. In other words, pre-screening answers are not, it's a filtering process and there's a purpose for it. And that is to say, hey, you got to kind of meet this criteria. It's not huge criteria. And we're collecting data as they go through that process. There's less data collected on the out of state. There's not very much collected on a little bit more on the distance learning. And then there's a lot more data collection you'll see on the in-state program, but we have to have something to connect it to so that when if they get through this screening process, they get to this page 21, which you'll see everywhere, which means, okay, yep, you made it through pre-screen. Then we want to be able to connect all that data that we collected back to that entity and location that they enter later. Let me stop here. Did we get that? Provided there'll be different questions. Yep. Okay. Very good. Thanks. All right. So for everyone, these first few pages are the same no matter what. So you go through this landing page. We're going to collect that email address. If it's okay, then we're going to basically categorize you. You're going to check and say if your provider, your in-state, out-of-state, or distance education page. but even then, we're going to go to this program description page, which you'll see. And then after that program description page, if they were an in-state, we'll just take this in-state first. I'm sorry, out of state first. If they're in-state, we're going to go to a different flow. If we're out of state, we're going to go to a different flow, or we're going to, if they're not out of state, they're distance education, we're going to get a different flow, and I'll show you that. But if this case that they're out of state, then we're going to go to one more page. So it's basically, you know, three questions and an email, and then we get to this, and it's like, okay, what's the ETPL of the state that you, of your state? Okay, that's not in state, and then we collect that information. They give it to us. They actually select the state. If they do that, then they're ready to go. They've passed the pre-screen. So if we see this green right here, that means they passed the pre-screening, and then there's a whole process there. Okay, and it's going to be similar to adding an entity. Obviously, we're going to reuse assets from a WIA user or anything else, like back on an entity administration. They won't have a list of all those entities, but they will be able to enter using some of those assets and the location stuff, but it'll be just specific to them. Okay, there's an error page if there's not. So we're going to go through this process first, okay? And we're going to show you these screens here. There may be some tweaks to these screens a little bit, look and feel later, but these are mocked up. Let me get back so I can figure out where we're at. Okay. All right, so this should be laid out in such a way you can see it. Okay. So there's going to be a landing page. We're deciding what's going to be all on this. This could be, you know, we're taking into consideration stuff like ProPath, and we're taking into consideration the stuff we have now, like do we have a search off this page, and what's the information, how that. So that's no biggie. But remember, we're what we call public access right now. I don't think there would be a different procedure for trade provider, but I don't know, Laura. You may need to answer that for me. I haven't looked in to the differences there.
Yeah, trade providers don't have to go through and be on the ETPL, so it would be different for them.
Oh, that's right.
Because I'm the one. This is Robert from local area 1. When I put in trade, we still got to put in the trade school in that same provider listing, and it shows throughout the state that it's there, but no training program is there for that particular school or something, depending on how I might have to set it up for a trade client. So how will we, like tell the difference between the Riola side and the trade side? I guess I'm trying to figure out here.
Well, on the trade side, that you're going to go in and put that entity in, and you're going to put in the entity location, contacts, the whole normal.
Right.
That is a separate process. So that's where you would put in trade, any of your supportive service providers, anything like that goes through that process. This process is strictly for WIOA. So you just kind of do it that way.
We have some kind of background noise here. Hold on a minute. Somebody can be on mute if we can. I don't know. We got some background noise somewhere. Anyway, okay, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's correct. We don't have to be on ETPL if we're trade, and so therefore, we're not doing a self-service pre-screening process here. We're going to be back to the LWIA to enter them in, and the LWIA can enter these in. But I think it's important to know that we want the new ETPL ones onboarding process to go through this. Okay, now. So we go to this landing page, and then there'll be something on here that says, yep, I've, this is my resource page, and I understand exactly what I'm trying to do, and I'm going to connect to start that pre-screening process. And when we do that, like I said, that first, we may change some wording here, but that first thing is we got to collect something. And as opposed to generating some kind of key for them to come back in with, which you all kind of been a part of before in some systems, we're just saying, hey, we just need your contact email address, and we're going to collect that. And then if on this particular one, if it's not a valid email address, we're just going to say, hey, it's not a valid email address. And then they can either cancel or they can get an invalid email address and they'll go on to page 3. All right, page 3. Remember, page 3, it says we're going to say we're in-state training site or headquartered and or has at least one physical training site in Illinois. The entity has an out-of-state training site. The entity is headquartered and or classes are held out of state, or the entity offers training service solely through distance education, only provides programs remotely via online audio conference, etc. One of these 3, it's a radio button. When you see the round here, just understand that that means if you selected one of these, if you selected the other one, that one would go off and this would go on. So the only thing you could do would be to select one of these 3. Okay. And if you hit the previous, obviously go back to the page 2, which would be that email. But if you hit to cancel, these are always pretty standard. You'll go to page 6, which will show you that you canceled. And then if you hit the next button in this situation, it goes to page 4. Okay. So now I've said in this particular one we're looking at, now I've said we're out of state. And then we go here, regardless in state, out of state, and we say which the following choices best describes our internet programs. Select 1. This is also a radio button scenario. But we do have a none of the above here because if for some reason they read all these and say, well, that's not my program. Okay. Institution of higher education, entity that carries out programs registered under National Apprenticeship Act, eligible provider adult education literacy, Title II. Okay. And then other public or private training, CBOs, those kinds of things. So those are our choices. If I didn't choose, if I said, if I was being honest, I said, it's not one of these, then I'd hit the none and above. Of course, the none and above would say, hey, it's got to be one of those. So, but if you went back, you would go to here, of course. If you went forward with a next and you had answered one of these 4, okay, so if you answer one of those 4 and you were answered out of state on page 3, then we're going to go page 5, and that's what we're going to concentrate on right now. Page 5 will give us one more piece of information, which is the entity listed in the state ETPO in which they are headquartered? Yes. They select yes, then they can select the state right there. At that point, when they do that and hit next, then we're saying, okay, we've collected everything we need to do to get them through pre-screening for an out-of-state program, and we would route them into the 21. That's the green box you saw above, which says, okay, now you can get your access, because you still got to get access. And remember, we're going to be hosted on the state system, the DoIT system. So there's going to be an Okta access, a multi-factor identification, all that. But they'll get that, and then they'll be connected to IWDS 2.0, and they'll be able to enter their entity information, their contact information, and of course the location and the program, and they'll be able to enter the program. Okay, so whenever you see 21 in this pre-screen, it's like you made the promised land and you're ready to do your entry. Okay. All right. So that's if you cancel, you always go to 6, and I'll show you that. In this case, if you answered no, you go to 7, and we'll show you that. Okay. If you ever cancel on any screen, you can cancel anywhere. It still lets them go back to the screen that they were on, just in case they're like, wait a minute, I didn't need to cancel. And if not, it allows them to exit. Okay. And exit will just take them back to the landing page. But that happens on anywhere you see a cancel. Okay. On 7. Okay, hold on a minute. Let me get this before this. Not split hairs, but when they select the radio button for distance learning online courses, the entity will still be asked whether their business operations are located in Illinois. No, let me see where that's at.
Sorry, Laura. Thank you, Laura. Laura answered that.
Oh, she answered? Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
And this is this is the kind of thing that we're wanting to gather here is, okay, what are we missing? What are we overlooking? What do you typically ask so that we can make sure that we capture that information here as we're splitting this up? And then I wanted to make sure and remind everybody that under the new policy, that the out-of-state and the distance education will be reviewed by the state ETPL coordinator. So that's not going to go through the local ETPL coordinators anymore. But since a lot of you have been used to doing that in the past, we definitely want to grab your expertise now so we can build it into the system.
It's good that it's good that I bugged you with that question earlier this week, or Laura, because because we were just talking about this like yesterday on something related to the the IBH, the PBVS authorization. So that's good that was fresh in my mind, I guess, because then it made me think like, well, maybe just bring it up now, just in case, because they could be online only, but if the business is located here, they might still be required to have that authorization under PBVS, or they may be exempt, but it's good that like along the process of the screens here, when if the OE is going to get a notification like, hey, there's an entity that's seeking to become a provider, you need to review, or in the dashboard or something that you mentioned, it's like Al, some kind of notification we might get, then it would at least it'll help us to remember, like, oh, do we need to screen, or do we need to tell them that do we need to put them in contact with IBAG, or do we need to consult with DCEO on this as far as, hey, how do we handle this type of training entity that's that meets this criteria? So thanks again, Laura and Al.
Okay, sure. Thanks, Laura, for helping me out there. There's probably some areas that I'm going to be pretty weak on.
Hey, Al,
And
before
then
you go too much further there, I noticed on that screen that you just had up there, it said an entity that provides solely by distance education. So I was going to ask a question about that, but I see this screen there. So I think that answers that question, but that's not going to hang up for regular local providers who happen to provide classes that are online as well, right? We're talking.
Correct.
So, okay.
Strictly
because up here,
on.
I think it says at least one physical, right? So if you had online also, you would still fall into this first one, right?
Yes. And again, like Rory put in the comments, some non-WIOA language. If there's any way that we can tweak this, if you can, to help make those distinctions, that it would be easier for a provider coming in to be able to know exactly what we're talking about and not have a lot of questions, then definitely send those our way so we can make sure that we build this out the right way.
Oh yeah, sorry. I didn't mean to like nitpick it. What this screen is a little more, kind of universally understandable. It was the one at the beginning, and I understand because the ETPL policy and in our states, WIOA policy. I mean, I know the language right now, it said that you are a public provider or other community-based organ. Those criteria that came straight from the policy, though. Yeah, I mean, I totally understand. Like, you don't want to. You don't want to make it an alternative language or wording to the point where you can't hold them to those criteria where they're going to not like misinterpret. You still want to make sure they get the point that you have to be this type of entity, this type of entity, this type of entity, this type of entity accredited. But so yeah, it might be kind of tricky, but yeah, I mean, I can take a look at it. And if I have suggestions, I can always send them to you. You know what I mean?
And
It's just
I will
like
and I'll
even
get
here
these.
in our
These are
office, we sometimes like I'll get questions like, "What does this mean?" So
these
Yeah, Al, quick
going into
question on the
documents too, Robert. Hold on just one second. These are going into
go ahead.
documents too, and I'll be able to share those with you so that you can, because you're not going to remember all this language in here, and then that way you can help us out too. Okay, go ahead, Robert.
Okay, when it became for a new provider and they starting this, would they have like a drop down requirement so they know before they proceed forward, you got to meet these criteria to be part of the Illinois WIOA training listing? Like, is it still hold true that a school had to be in existence for a year to be put on the list, over a year to be put on the list? Would there be some kind of
So I
something
think
to
this
say?
page right here, right,
Mhm.
Robert, we're going to have plenty of information on what the criteria is,
Gotcha.
all that
Okay.
kind of stuff. We're going to provide this landing page here is going to provide them with all the kind of information, that kind of information, links to whatever documentation we need to link them to, and all that kind of stuff before they even get to that point where they're saying, yeah, I think my program is going to be eligible. I want to get it in there. Okay. So
Great.
that's the concept there. Yep.
Okay.
Okay. And then we're going to also add some info bubbles here if we need, wherever we think we could use more description or whatever. We haven't got that figured out yet either, but we may need to add some of those info bubbles where you touch them and they'll tell you more information on what that means if somebody's confused. Okay. Anything else before I go show you the concept of here? Okay. So this is just another ineligible. You'll see these gray ineligible pages. This is if you haven't canceled, but you think you've done everything you need to do and you hit that next button. But we say, sorry, you're going to get some error messages, an error message. This in particular is sorry, doesn't qualify eligible training provider list due to the following reasons. Your entity is not listed on the state CTPO where your entity is located. So this basically was you didn't hit the affirmative on, you didn't hit yes, you hit no, or you hit yes and didn't select the state, one of those two things. Now, if you did that obviously, if you did that accidentally or something like that, you can go back to that page. Otherwise, you're going to say, oh, I didn't know that, so I'm going to get out. Any questions about that? Okay. All right. So that through 5 with 6 and 7, and then of course 21 is not mapped out, but that is what we're calling the pre-screening process for an out-of-state program / entity. All right, I'm going to take you back up here, and we're going to take a look at distance education. Okay, just a little bit more, not much more. Okay. So the distance education, you've selected that, and first of all, you've gone through the
Hand
go
up.
ahead. Yeah.
Didn't know.
Oh yes, I'm sorry. There's also a chat in here.
Oh, no, that's okay. Sorry, I could have waited till you were done with it. That's why I raised my hand instead of just blurting in like I usually do, because I just figured I could wait till there's a break in the point. I was just going to ask if these screens come after you said they, when they first get to the link, right as of right now, it's like a public IWDS screen where they get the contact person for their local area when they put in their zip code and that. So these screens would be after they've had that. And the reason I was asking is because if they get a message, if they do get a message that tells them that based on the information entered, it does not appear that you are eligible. Whatever the wording was on that screen that showed that. I mean, and that's great. That's simple. Makes sense. But when they get that, like if they think like, oh, well, maybe we hit something wrong. Like, just do they have recourse to like kind of contact the local area just to ask? So they will have had that information before they do these screens, right?
Well,
like the one where they log, where they get the information, like they're filling this stuff out after they've already been seeing that.
So
screen. Like your contact information.
Right. The difference is the difference is yes and no. Okay. So we haven't really provided them with the contact, and I don't know, we can speak up to that. I guess we haven't really provided them with the contact at any of the LWIA or the state. At this point, it's a pre-screening process to say, basically, do you self kind of self-attestation, right? Self pre-screening to say, am I eligible to be on this? If I'm not eligible, then why do I bother anybody, right? And so now you can go back, obviously, in the pre-screening process, you can go back, forward. You can look at all the information. You can say, well, I don't quite get why I wasn't eligible. But then we haven't really talked about, I'm sure, well, I'm sorry. We do have, I'm totally sorry. I do. At the top of each screen, you're just going to see this. And it's going to give also this help menu of topics. And then we're also going to have some kind of hey, contact us.
Perfect.
That's
Okay.
the top of, that's the header of every screen. I'm sorry. So this, we should be now, we'll have to, you know, how that will be is probably some kind of contact page where you're saying, hey, we might have to ask a question like of
No, that's perfect. Yeah.
where are you or something like that, you know,
Yeah, I
so
didn't even notice
it's,
that. Okay.
yeah, it's on every, I'm sorry. And I forgot about it. It's on every page.
No, that's okay. I was just like, kind of looking at, I just was keep getting out of the sequence.
No
Mhm.
problem. Yeah, I forget about it too. Okay, so then we're gonna try to have plenty of help and try to be straightforward and try to be very simple questioning and all that. So here's the distance education flow. Once again, landing, collect email, in-state, out-of-state distance. Those pages will be similar, and then that program description, what type of program. And then at that time, the system says, oh, are they in state? Yes, it goes to another flow we're going to look at. No, they're not out of state. Are they out of state? That goes to the flow we just looked at. Or no, it's distance education, and it goes to the flow we're going to look at now. Okay. In this situation, we have one more page that we not only collect that ETPL date, we also collect accreditation, and I'll show you that. And then there's I think there's just at least one error page, but I think one error, I think I merged these together, but it tells you why you didn't get through this page positively, or it says, okay, let's go for it. Okay. All right. So you've seen the landing page, the collect email, in state, out of state. In this particular case, we're going to say we're going to select this one. And then we're also going to here, which talks about what their program would collect that information. Assuming that's all positive, then we're going to go to screen 9. Okay. So screen 9. Now this is a little bit more information. Okay. So on screen 9, we're going to ask them if the distance education is an entity accredited by an organization, recognized via Department of Education and or the nonprofit Council for Higher Education, CHEA, or such as a distance education accrediting. So one of those accreditations. It won't be freeform. They will be able to, they will actually select whatever we have in here. So if they say yes, they select that, and then they can browse for that verification of accreditation and on their system at documentation, and it'll be uploaded when they hit that next button. Okay. Also, we asked that same question on this. Are you listed on the ETPL in which state you're headquartered? And then they can select that state. Okay, so if they hit yes, if they select this, if they upload a document, obviously our system's not going to know if it's the right document or not, but that's okay. If they upload that, if they've selected this and they hit next, all positive, then it's going to go on to 21. They've passed the pre-screening process, and they're going to be able to start creating their entity and all that kind of stuff. If any of this is in a sense negative, okay, so if they answered no to any of this, or they answered yes and didn't select, or they didn't upload anything, those kinds of negatives, then we'll give them an error screen and we'll tell them what was wrong. Okay. Obviously from this screen, like any screen, you can just say, I'm done, cancel out, or you can go back to the previous screen you went to. Okay. All right. You've seen the cancel. I'm going to take you to 10. It's just going to have one of those or all of those reasons. It's just going to say, hey, sorry, does not qualify on the Illinois ETPL. So here's the reasons. It could be that wasn't accredited. They hit no, in other words, or they didn't select an organization, or they didn't upload the document, or they weren't on another state. Okay. If they get one of these errors, they can just exit out, or they can go back to that page and say, well, what did I not do right? Oh, I see. I didn't even see that state thing. I get it, or that organization thing. I need to select that. Could be anything like that. Or they could just say, okay, I guess I'm not eligible. Okay. So that is distance education, distance learning. Questions on this piece?
Is there a time frame attached to the accreditation question? Because they
Good
can lose.
question.
I mean, they can be
We do
accredited.
have,
and then they
we
can
do
lose it.
have some of that on dates on this next in-state, but I don't have the accreditation date here. I don't know if we need that here. Do we need that here, Laura? Because we are collecting it on some other areas, the date in which the accreditation was.
I think the assumption is that if they upload it, we're going to be able to see that that it's within that time frame. What time frame they're accredited for. But if that's not the case, then we would add the dates. So we'll make sure that we'll note that. So
Yeah, I got that. Okay. So yeah, I'll show you some of that on other places for other types of accreditation kind of things, letters and stuff like that, but we didn't have that here.
And we're talking about accreditation for the whole provider, not for a particular program.
correct.
Yeah, it says, it does say program or programs. So maybe we might have to, oh yeah, it says is the entity accredited by, there you go. Okay, so that gets us through the pre-screening for the distance learning. Now we'll go to the a little bit more complex. Are we good on time, or what's our time here? Let me see what my time is.
We're doing good, Al.
Okay, we're doing okay.
10:48.
Okay, all right, good. All right, so let me back out a little bit, and let's go to this one. It's not as complex as it looks, but when you spell it out with the flow, it looks complex. But basically, this first part's the same again. We're collecting email. We're deciding that this time you're going to be in state. We get that program description, and then obviously it's not out of state or distance, so we're going to go right up here. And then since we look at this program type, and it's one of these seven, I think we have types. If I've got that right. I don't know if Lori, you changed that or not, but 7 types. And then each one of those, depending upon which it is, these two are very similar, public and private, have a set of questions and potential documents to upload and dates and all that kind of stuff. We're going to see that. If all that's positive, then they get to go to 21. If any of that's negative, we'll tell them why. Those two are very similar. These are more specific. So there's different error pages that tell you why. And if all that stuff is positive, it goes to that 21. And there's an option to say, and I'm not any of these. In that case, of course, we're going to say, well, that's not eligible. It has to be one of these. Okay, there's a question here. Get Larry cautious about only allowing a specific term, accreditation. But maybe more of a policy-ish kind of question. And certainly we could come back to that another time. Okay, let me mark that down too.
And we're still,
Right.
this that we're looking at right now, we're still talking about the provider, right? Not the individual programs.
Correct.
Okay, because when it says in-state entity program type and everything, it gets confusing. Like when you say program description, like, because
That's your go back up there, Al. I think that's
Okay.
basically what you put in that box there, the top box for page 12. When you say program type, I think that's what's confusing.
Yeah. Okay. We'll look at that. It should say entity or program type, because I think there's a couple questions. I mean, most of those questions are specifically about the entity.
Mm-hmm.
But okay, it should be an in state, and then entity or program type is the questioning. We just went here. Yeah, that's a little bit too much
because we're
in one
very,
box like that, but we'll go look at it and see if it makes it more understanding when we actually look at that page.
So
But
when
And remember that the out of state and the distance education is going to go straight to the state ETPL coordinator. So you're not going to see those, but this is where the in-state providers, where you would be the owning LWIA, because the state would be the owning OWIA for the out-of-state and the distance education. This is where you're going to be the owning OWIA, and so this is where you would normally go through your process. But it's hopefully this process helps to go through those pre-screening questions so that you'll get all this information up front before they go in and put their information in. So hopefully it'll be a little bit more straightforward when we get to further down in these screens, so you can kind of see what that's like.
Okay. This is should not be as easy to follow because there's not much in these boxes. Then we actually see it. So let's go start at, we'll slide through those first ones because just for memory, and then we'll get to page 12, right? So same thing again, we all come through these, we collect their email, we decide if they're now in state, and we collect this information here. And then we go to page 12, which is going to be down here. All right, let's take a look at this. It starts to get a little bit more interesting. Okay, so here, which option best describes your in-state entity or program type? Okay. So as you can see, the first one, basically the second one, those are about the institution or entity. Is it a private post-secondary institution, college, university, degree granting, or career and technical education? Or is it a public post-secondary institution, community college, university, degree granting, or career technical education? One of those two. Or registered apprenticeship program, or adult education literacy program, or pre-apprenticeship program, or industry recognized program, or other CBO and faith-based organization. Okay, so
No, yeah,
Hey.
those two were combined.
you did combine these, right? Which one's the I'm sorry, let me write that.
Industry recognized is out of there. It's just CBO or faith-based.
So I thought, okay.
Okay, but I don't think you can have an other
You
and a
can't,
none of the above.
well, no,
Other means everything
okay,
else. So I don't know how you would mark none of the above if you have an other option, unless other shouldn't be part of CBO.
It is, and we have a more defined listing. This was just a quick mock-up, but there are much more. There's some more identifying information that can be added here that will be a little bit more, so that they'll be able to determine which one they truly are. So right now, that's just a placeholder for CBO, faith-based, joint management, labor. All of that falls in here, but
so the other is going to be defined. What I'm saying is you can't have other and none of the above. Other covers everything else. So there would never be none of the above.
well, I think the none of the above was added just because it's a check just to say, okay, you're saying you're none of these, your program doesn't fall within one of these types, and then it'll take you to the page that says, sorry, you can't be part of the ETPL because you're not one of these types.
now, right, that's the only reason I added that none of the above, but because I thought other was other type of program specific to CBO or faith-based organization. If there are more in this list, or we could take out, it's like one, maybe it's one of these, maybe there's a different word than other, I don't know, but we may need to, if we have other ones. So
How about just
other than
specific to?
these, yeah.
How about just specific to CBO
Yeah,
or
it could be.
faith-based?
Yeah.
No, I get it. It sounds like it's just a placeholder for now. I understand what you're saying, Laura. And I understand, I think what Mark was saying is like, with other, or does that mean you're giving them the chance somewhere either here or somewhere down the road to say, I'm other, I actually am a trade association or something like that. And so that's why it would be, well, not another job. I do have an other, and then, so, but it's not the other. And then we're like, we're the normal sense, what we're used to saying, where it's like other, and then a box would come up and say, if other, please describe here. You're saying,
No.
or it's just a placeholder kind of right now until the additional things are added and the terminology is finalized.
Correct, because that's just how it's
Correct.
listed in the act.
Okay, that helps. Yep, thanks.
Yep. All right, and I got to clean that up. I forgot. We combined a couple of these, and then we got that out. So, which will make this a whole lot different too. Go ahead.
Al?
Whoever that was. Yes.
Al, this is Lori, and I have to leave. I have a rapid response, but can I just make a suggestion? And I used to work in higher education, so just from that point of view, when you say in-state entity program type, they're going to try to restrict it down to one actual like accounting degree. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. If you just reword that to say in-state entities type of programs, that's going to be a lot clearer to them, because when you say program, they're thinking specific training.
That's what I was getting at with
Yeah.
your question.
Yeah, and that's just my opinion. I just had to leave. I just wanted to say something before I had to go.
Yeah.
Okay,
somebody
thanks.
Should say provider type.
provider, yeah, type,
Yeah.
yeah.
Same with on that flow chart, that reference to page 12 probably should have just said provider instead of program.
Yeah.
That we saw earlier.
Okay. All right, good. I got that down. All right. So, Lori, which ones again did we, before I go look it up, we took, how is this supposed to be right
Well,
now? I want to just
Right
zoom out
now,
here.
it'll be the private, then the public. We split those out. It'll be the registered apprenticeship, adult ed, pre-apprenticeship, CBO, faith-based, joint management is combined into one. Industry recognized program, well, of course, that's not a entity type. That's should never been there. So, but pre-apprenticeship and the other were combined, and then that's gone.
This is gone, and these two, these are combined.
Yes.
Okay, I'll just put it like that for now.
Yeah.
Okay.
'Cause, yeah. I had looked up the act to make sure that we were following.
Yeah,
it.
you've told me, and I haven't fixed that yet. Okay, so yeah, some of these pages, then we're gonna have private,
Mhm.
public. We're gonna have 16, and then we're gonna have 17, and then 18 and 19. Well, 19 is out.
Go away,
And
but
then 18 and 20 are together. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. All right. We'll take a look at that. Okay. So from here, as you can imagine, if you hit one of these, none would be take it to saying it's got to be one of these. Cancel would be cancel, like we've seen. Or 14, let's go to 14 first, and that's private post-secondary institution. All right. Both the private and public look very similar.
Mhm.
But so just so you know, we're probably going to need some reusability in there, but here's what we are collecting. I'm going to leave it kind of big so we can kind of read this for everybody. So is a private post-secondary institution either degree granting institution or a career and technical education? So we're asking first, is it degree granting? This is kind of out here, or is it career technical? So it's one of these two. If
Mhm.
it has to be one of these two, right? So let's assume I select this one. And then you have, is the entity accredited by an agency recognized by U.S. Department of Education, nonprofit council? So that was that other kind of question. This one here, we do have a date. It's the same question. If they hit yes, they can select the agency, they can enter the date, and they can upload some kind of a document that basically proves that that's true. If they hit no, then of course, next, somewhere down the line here, when we hit next, it's going to say, it can't be no. Okay, so that's that. There's two questions under degree granting. The second question is, does the entity have a degree granting letter from the Illinois Board of Higher Education, IWDS, Division of Academic Affairs? Yes, of course, that's got to be positive, and they browse for that letter. Okay, so you will either enter this positively and select, and this plus this yes and select. That would be it for this page, and you would get routed to 21. Or if you hit this one, career or technical, then it's a little bit different. We're saying basically, once again, is it approved to operate under Illinois under the Private Business Vocational Schools, PBVS, by Illinois Board Higher Education Academic Affairs? Yes. Now they can yes and browse to upload the approval letter. I believe no in this case would be okay, right, Lori, if they browsed and uploaded their exempt letter. And this no would be okay also. So it's either yes, this no, or this no, which means you got a delay letter. So you either got an approval letter or you got one of these two. Any of these three, these are radio buttons, any of these three with the uploaded document will take you to 21. And right, remember, this is all stuff that's going to have to be reviewed when that information is pulled in and that entity is there for you. And you get notification that says, hey, somebody's completed this information out here and they're wanting to be on EPL. Take a look at all this stuff. Okay. And then the other question would be, yes, does the Title IV eligibility or license certification bodies require graduates to complete it? Yes, then you select that agency, enter a date, browse for the thing. So if you select this, then you're going to get all this. One of these up here and this all has to be good before you can go to 21. If not, then you're going to get an error message. Okay.
Done.
Dan and
Anything,
Rory
Lori,
have
you
their
want to
hand.
add to that? Did you want to add something to that, Lori? No,
No.
you good? Okay. Okay.
Dan
All
and
right. So
Rory,
now,
you have your hands raised.
Yeah, Dan's ahead of me though. Go ahead, Dan.
okay.
Quick comment. Most of this obviously is all dictated by state policy, et cetera. And the same with the lingo or the terms that are used. Like on this page specifically are like, I can see where someone outside of our system, that all of that makes perfect sense to them. But I think I heard like somebody use the word like provider, and I throw this out here now as we go through all of this for the side for the people who aren't part of our system, like always using a term that can't be like, what does that even mean? I mean, I know like if you've ever seen someone trying to file an unemployment claim and they're not they're not a staff person, or like, I don't know what that means. And so I just throw that out there for this little bit of it.
Yep. We definitely have to have plenty of help here. We have to have, some info bubble potentially on some of these things so that people can get a better description if they need to, if it's not clear or whatever. And of course, if it's totally not clear, they can essentially contact. But yeah, I agree. We've got to make sure our language, and that's why we're actually getting this out in front of everybody. All right. So then
Al, we have one more question. Rory's got his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Rory. Okay, go ahead. Might be on mute.
Can you go? No, that's okay, Al. I'm sorry. Can you go back to the screen really quick right before this one?
Yeah, that'd be 12 right here.
So if you zoom in a little, thanks. So we're this could just be me. Sorry, it just when I saw that first. So in the first radio button, it's oh yeah, and someone already said program type. Maybe switch that to like type of your organization type, or what type of provider organization you are. Yeah, but then in that first radio button, it says private post-secondary institution, and then the hyphen colleges and universities. Like the second bullet there then does say, oh, if you're not a degree conferring academic institution, you could still qualify if you're a career and technical education provider. But I almost would have like skipped that over, because in that where it says private post-secondary institution, because I thought that meant, dash, what I mean? Like colleges, universities, that's the only option. So I don't know if there's a way to maybe move that down to the first bullet, or, combine that with the degree granting institution, like colleges, universities, like hyphen degree granting or colon, semicolon. So it was just me. Like I almost like was looking at that saying, oh man, it looks like you guys are only limiting it to like universities and community colleges. And then I saw that second bullet point that says current technical. So, and again, that could just be, our eyes always, like subliminally, like our eyes kind of take us to where they take us, different people reading it may have caught that or may not have. If anyone else thinks that is a potential pitfall, then I would say, yeah, ask if maybe there's a way to take that out.
Basically, I think I put that on the draft mock-up just to try to keep things clear in my mind, that I needed to make sure that I went through BHE to make sure that the questions that are required to be asked to get those letters to operate are in there, and that's who we need to make sure that gets approval by here. So obviously, there's typos, there's changes that we need to be making, but originally this was just a very quick, and actually not that quick, but it was just kind of a way to say, okay, how can we do it better now? So yeah, so this is not set in stone. So we can definitely take off colleges or universities off of that one and off the next one.
Or even just like move it down. So, but yes, right, that wasn't like a critique or anything. I totally makes sense. Like, when you're kind of putting the thoughts together, like, and I know why it was there. I'm just saying, if I was to see it, I might at first, if I wasn't reading carefully enough, think that it's only limited, and that I might not have even gotten to that second bullet point. So that's all. But thank you. That explains a lot. Thank you.
Now I just take them off, Al, because
Take them off.
Yeah, because CTE could be under colleges as well. So,
Well, as I look at the Pearl on this, wouldn't we want to match these? Well, they have 8 options outlined in the Pearl and further outlined in CFR 680-410, because they have like higher education for associate's degree, higher education for baccalaureate or higher, and higher education for majority of credentials awarded, such as community college certificate of completion. Because if we use a list like we're showing here on this document, we're not going to be able to report accurately to DOL if we don't have those options, these options.
We catch that on the program side, Mark, not the provider side.
But this is a question of explain the entity type, and then we're going to change that on the program side?
No, we're not going to change. It just gets down further so you can report properly on that side.
The training program will have that data, right? The training program itself.
I mean, you could take off the degree granting here. You could take off the CT. You could take that all off here because it doesn't matter. That was something that I added as something for me to keep my head around it. It doesn't have to be here. You're either a private or you're a public, or you're a registered apprenticeship program, or your adult education. This was just to give examples of what types of entities could be here. But when we get further into it, we do ask about the certificate and things like that. That's where, does this program provide a certificate? Yes. So it's about
but that's not what the Pearl element is talking about.
Are you talking about Pearl or ETP reporting?
The ETP reporting, Pearl
different.
9171. There are 8 recordable options.
How about we figure this out offline?
Okay.
We make sure we get it right. But can you, Al, can you go up there and take or program type off of there and just stay, describe, just take that off now. So we have that.
Do you want provider instead of entity?
Yeah,
Probably, right? Because we know, internally we know what that is.
Entity.
You want entity?
Yeah, I'll leave it entity right now. Just.
Okay. Okay.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Well, yeah, and I guess we got to keep in mind too that this is just kind of the screening tool, so that an entity knows, like, do I even potentially qualify to complete this application process to be eligible to receive this, this grant money, to be this kind of school that can receive this money. And then I guess what you're saying, Laura, is like once we get into what the IWDS 2 staff users, like what we would be doing when we create or enter the entity, the relationship, the programs, that's where we'd be able to get more detailed then and satisfy those reporting.
Correct. This is just
right.
This is just to say, are you one of these? Then you go forward. If you're not, you can't move forward. I mean, that's strictly all this is.
Yep.
Yeah, got it. This doesn't set anything in stone. That happens when we actually
and we
have
like
IWDS now, like when we create when we're creating the more detailed entity and program info. That's when that stuff gets
correct.
And to
Yes.
go back to Lori Warren's point before she jumped off, up there in the blue, the program needs to be deleted there too, the word. Because we're talking about the actual training institutions who are going to be logging on to pre-screen themselves. And as soon as you put program in there, they're going to think you're talking about specific programs and not their whole entity.
Yep.
Institution, anything, I mean, whatever.
Somebody's light. Is somebody trying to get to us?
Hey, Mark, you're on mute.
Sorry.
Okay. All right. All right. So then I was here. We collected this information. We do say degree granting or career. We do check for this accreditation stuff. And then if if any of these, we go to this 27, which basically will tell us, it'll be an error page to say this is what was wrong on that previous page. Might have to clean up some of this language, but this will tell us what was wrong. And then they can go back to wherever they came from. It could have been 14 or it could have been 15, depending on where they came from. We're just going to share in a page here, or they could get out in 15, very, very similar to 14, because this is public. So public post-secondary institution, degree granting or career technical, same basic layout and same basic information that we're collecting. All this positive, passing this positive gets them to, yep, we're ready to go. We're past the pre-screening. Okay, so that's those first two.
We didn't leave in the PBVS on the public, did we?
What's that?
Yeah, this is public institution, so Private Business and Vocational Schools Act wouldn't apply. So I don't know how that got left in here on accident.
Oh, I don't know. My fault.
Public, it shouldn't be that. That doesn't apply.
That's right. Okay. Let me write that down. We got to clean that up. Clean language. Public. CTE. Okay. All right. And you haven't really I don't think you've dove deep into the third document yet. You've been in the first couple. So this is very fresh and early. Okay. So then that next one is registered apprenticeship program. That would be 16. Okay, there's just a couple things here. It's described as registered apprenticeship. Does this program have a registered apprenticeship partners information database, Rapids ID? Yes or no? We're not exactly asking for it, but we're just saying, does it have it? Does the program have all information needed to complete the opt-in form? Yes or no? Those are two positives. Two positives get you to 21. Either one of those negative will get you to a negative answer, ineligibility, and it'll tell you why. Okay, that's page 22. So anything here is pretty straightforward for a registered apprenticeship program. Is there anything else we're maybe missing for pre-screening? Oh, do we want to upload the opt-in form? Or no, you say link. We'll just link it.
Yeah,
right?
link.
Okay. All right. The next one is adult education and literacy. Adult education and literacy is 17. Pretty straightforward. A couple questions here. Program is described as adult education literacy program is the entity eligible training provider of adult education literacy activities under WIO Title II by the Illinois Community College Board ICB. Yes or no? Is a training program offered in conjunction with occupational skills training as part of the integrated education and training IET program? Yes or no? Okay. Anything we think we're missing there, or that's just pretty simple, straightforward, what we're going to do for adult education literacy program. Okay. And then, of course, if they answer negatively, it'll take them to 23, which is basically, hey, which one of those are not answered? All right. The next one, we're we're probably getting, okay, now we're getting into, so I had this separate, so we'll have to see. This is probably going to get a little bit different. These 18 and 20s combined, industries out. So if we look at 18, we got to look at 18 now and look at 20, and let's just see what we got here. 17. So 18, on the pre-apprenticeship, we had 5 questions. Okay, 1 on curriculum aligning with skill needs. 1 on the program provide access education, career counseling, supported services directly or indirectly. Does the program provide hands-on meaningful learning activities or connected to educational and training activities such as exploring career options, understanding how the skills required through the coursework can be applied toward a future career? Are the opportunities to attain at least an industry recognized credential available through the program? And does the program have a partnership with one or more experts? So this is for the, I thought it was for the registered, the pre-apprenticeship program. And so I'm assuming that we are combining that then 18 with this. Right. So are we going to put these, are we going to have a, if you combine those in there, are you going to have like an outside radio button that says your pre-apprenticeship, or, you know what I'm saying, or industry recognized? Not, no, this is out. I'm sorry, 20. This, like, I'm assuming, Laura, we won't have to answer, we wouldn't be answering these questions if it was pre-apprenticeship.
Right,
Right.
there's a whole different set of questions for pre-apprenticeships.
So, well,
We
why
would
are you wanting to combine those?
sub this down and say,
Okay.
which one are you?
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
yeah.
We can do that. We'll shove this down like we did on the post-secondary. We'll have a question on the outside here that says, basically, are you pre-apprenticeship or are you one of these?
Mhm.
And then once they answer one of those, then they'll answer those questions. So they either answer these questions if they're pre-apprenticeship, or if they answer, yes, I am other CBO faith-based organization stuff, then they'll answer these questions. On these, entity program for which CBO certification recognized as improved standards. These are standards. So we're going to have these standards in here to select which standards you're it's recognized by. And then down here, entity or private business or vocational school, yes. And then you have that situation here where you could upload a letter, or you could upload an exemption, or you could upload a delay. One of these 3 are fine. If you haven't got any of these, you're out. If you haven't got, actually, we don't need this one here. I don't think, do we? Yeah, we do. If this one, I guess if you were no here, you would be out. And then also if you were no here, you would be out on this page, which will be a dual page. So, and then of course, 26 gives the reasons, which will be combined with 24's reasons. We'll combine all those so that these 2 pages, 18 and 20, are together. And 26 and 24 are together. All that positive, you get to go to 21. All right, that's a lot to absorb. I'll hopefully this makes sense and it's a positive direction for the next process of getting on the ETPL. I'll get this, and when I get these into pages, I'll get them linked for you so you can kind of look at those a little bit closer. And then we can also go back after we clean this up before next week. We can go back through it another time in this meeting for the pages that we clean up. Any departing questions or any other questions that you want to talk about on this pre-screening process? All right.
So then
I
we're,
think,
everything
go
that,
ahead.
this whole pre-screening thing, they then, whatever they have put in, once they get to the eligible part, and you say,
Yep.
yeah, you're good, then all of this information will import into each individual program record?
Yes, we're gonna, whatever needs to be, whatever applies to that program information, which is still being hammered out, the program itself, the questions and all that, and the data we're collecting and how we're collecting it on the actual creation of the programs. Anything that we collect will go forward. Also, anything we need from when they create their entity and all that, and the location and all that information. Yep. There won't be a re-entry of any of that. No. It'll pull forward. And it'll pull forward in future too. Like if you create another program, we'll have this information and we'll pull that forward. So you're not going to be creating those programs from scratch. All right, well, thank you. Taylor, Lynette, Annie, anything else that you want to talk about today? Any questions or anything?
Not on mine.
We're good?
Nope, we only have a few minutes left, so I think it's good to stop here.
All right. Thanks, everybody. I hope this was helping and we got it out.